Mr. Bhutto.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I am not supposed to be in good health. But I can assure you, no matter how poor my health, it is sufficient for Indira Gandhi. I am really delighted and honored to meet you. I say I'm honored to meet you because I was advised that it would not be a good thing for me to meet and address Pakistanis in England. And I thought about it. I gave it thought because the advice came from some good friends. And I have not spoken since I've left the cabinet. I have not spoken in the country for good reasons. And I don't think that I would like to speak here also for good reasons on internal matters. I would not like to refer to any question or matter relating to the internal conditions which in legal parlance are called within the domestic jurisdiction of the state for a number of reasons. I think you can understand them. One is that, as the President himself has repeatedly said in the recent past, Pakistan is going through a difficult period. And undoubtedly, if you look at the objective conditions, we are going through a difficult period. But it is a challenge which we have to face and meet like any other country in Africa and Asia. Some of these factors are inherent in the objective realities which face newly emergent countries in Asia and Africa. Some of them are essentially peculiar to Pakistan. So that's one good reason why I would not like to touch upon internal conditions. The other good reason is that I would not like to speak on internal matters in a foreign land, and especially in a country which ruled us for 200 years. It would be derogatory of the sovereignty and independence of Pakistan for me to speak on internal conditions in Great Britain. And that is another good reason why I would not like to speak on internal factors. You are all enlightened people. You all take an interest in the affairs of the country. I know I have been a student like you. I've been to Gibson and Weldon also. And I'm aware of the problems that face you and how deeply you are involved in the country's future and the country's interest. And you come to your own conclusions. It's not necessary for me to call a spade and to talk on matters on which I'm sure you have given very deep and profound thought. So taking all these things into account, I hope you will forgive me if you were expecting me to talk on Tashkent spirit or any other intoxication if I do not speak on such subjects. But I would like to talk generally on international relations because I have dealt with that subject for a number of years, and I have been personally and directly involved in the evolution of the foreign policy of Pakistan. Of course, I was only an instrument in the execution of Pakistan's foreign policy and only an agent according to the Constitution and even otherwise. So I do not take any credit for having rendered a contribution to my country, but I think it's a truism that anyone who is responsible, anyone who is in government, anyone who has a responsibility should make a contribution to his country. And from that point of view, I would not say that I'm being immodest or I'm violating the Constitution or any sanctity if I say it gave me great honor and gave me great satisfaction to represent 100 million people, the like of which I've never seen anywhere in the world. I was wondering whether I should write a speech, make points and notes, and I thought about it, I wondered, and I said that if I was addressing some people in Latkana, which is my hometown, I perhaps would jot down a few points, but you people are too sophisticated for me, and I thought that it would be much better if I spoke off the cuff and sort of shared our minds and got into a communication between ourselves rather than to jot down points or to speak on any specific subject. And if I were to ramble and meander in this manner, I would like to say that one of the things that has struck me since I've left the government is that the foreign press of the Western countries has labeled me as being pro-Peking, pro-Chinese. Now, as I said in Cairo when I was a guest of the UAR government, where Gamal Nasser very kindly invited me to stay there, and I met an Indian correspondent. He came to see me. I said, I am a Pakistani, that's all I am. I believe in my country's interest in safeguarding the sovereignty and independence of Pakistan. Millions of lives were lost for the creation of Pakistan. Pakistan is a great ideal. I was a student when the whole concept of Pakistan emerged, and to me, Pakistan was the handsomest offspring of self-determination. And Pakistan will always remain a great concept of Pakistan has a role to play in Asia, in Africa, in the world. It's the voice of 100 million people articulated on the purity of an ideal. And there is nothing more important than an ideal. Now, this may be unrealistic, this may not be pragmatic, this may not be down to earth, but everything is not achieved by being down to earth. I don't know this phrase, down to earth, it's an Anglo-Saxon expression, but nonetheless, down to earth concept is something which I don't fully understand, because there's nothing stronger than the force of an ideal, the force of principles. And that is why, although India is much larger than us in geography, in resources, in military hardware, in every sense, I am of the firm conviction that we are bound to prevail. We are bound to prevail because we espouse a great and honorable cause. One day I was told that the Indian army is 3 times the size of Pakistan. Now it's supposed to become 4 times the size of Pakistan. And I gave a non-military answer. That means I said that our soldiers will have to shoot 3 times more, that's all. And now they're threatening us with the atom bomb. Well, after all, science and technology is everyone's right. Man goes to the moon. Progress and scientific technology cannot be restricted. If India has an atom bomb, that does not mean that we are going to subject ourselves to nuclear blackmail, because the question here is not of arms against having less arms. The question here is of right against wrong. And if you look at it from the concept of right against wrong, it is like giving Mr. Shastri, who's dead now, an atom bomb, and like taking him and making him go to a nightclub. I mean, after all, he can't use it properly. If he does not have the capacity and the power and the right force and resources to use it, and therefore I am not concerned if India's military strength is augmented, because Pakistan stands for a right cause, a just cause, and that right and just cause must prevail. This is the history of the world. You go back to Rome, Spartacus against Rome, Carthage against Rome, Greek empires have dwindled, British Empire is gone, the French Empire is gone. The oppressed must be the victors over the oppressed. And this is our position, that the 5 million people of Kashmir, they are the oppressed. And by standing by them, by upholding the right of self-determination of people of Jammu and Kashmir, we have not to consider in any way the size, the resources, or the support that India gets from any quarter, because we must prevail. The 100 million people must continue the struggle, and this struggle must continue until it has been fulfilled. It is only a question of stamina. It's not a question of resources. It's not a question of might. It's a question of stamina. The will, the resource. You must have the will to continue the struggle. And the people of Pakistan, I hope, will have the massive will to continue to uphold the cause of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because here they are supporting an ideal, supporting the very basis of Pakistan. Sometimes now it is said, I know from what quarters and from where, that, well, Kashmir, it's an old problem. After all, there are insolvable problems, there are insolvable disputes like Berlin, and this is another insolvable problem. That's one argument that's used. The other argument that's used is also from interested and special quarters. Why should the 55 million people of East Pakistan sacrifice for the 5 million people of Kashmir? Why not let economic development take place? After all, economic development is more important, and we've lived with this problem, we can live with it for the future. It's not that at all. If these arguments refute the will of the people of a country. The will should never, we should take a direct lesson from Vietnam. The struggle in Vietnam has a great bearing on the future of the world, particularly on Asia and the subcontinent. The Vietnam government does not say just an equitable solution, meaningful discussions. They say get out and then talk. We also, self-determination for Jammu and Kashmir, nothing else. I must tell you that at the time of partition, well, you can explain it. We lost Gurdaspur, we lost areas in East Pakistan, Assam, a certain region of Assam and Tripura, and we rationalized, well, after all, if you get an independent country, it's more important to hold to it than to try and seek justice. This is in the process of upheaval, in the process of revolution, and therefore we had to accept the position. And on that account, we rationalized on other matters. But if you keep rationalizing, there will be the gradual territorial attrition of Pakistan. If today you take the argument that the 5 million people of Jammu and Kashmir, they should not be sacrificed for the 55 million people of East Pakistan, let us take that to its logical conclusion. It sounds all right if you believe in the status quo, if your belly is fat, if you want to just sit on your back, if you don't want to be a part of the revolution, if you don't want to be a part of the music of change, of metamorphosis, then of course vested interest, yes, sounds, you can logically argue, well, after all, why do that? But let us take it as logical conclusion. And I'm not saying something new, I've said this before. If this argument taken to its logical conclusion, that means that all right, you leave the 5 million people of Jammu and Kashmir and say that they are not worth the sacrifice of 55 million people of East Pakistan or the 50 million people of West Pakistan. But does the problem end there? The problem does not end there. Then India, whetted by its appetite, aggrandized by its appetite, they will say, well, let's start doing something in the Ran of Kutch. Then the 30 million people or 30 lakh people, 3 million people or whatever it is of Karachi and Sindh, well, they are not worth 80 million people of Pakistan. Then give up Sindh and Karachi. After that, they will say, well, Afghanistan has some claim. Then the 30 lakh people or 40 lakh people of that region, they are not also, because 100 million people cannot sacrifice themselves for 30 lakh people. Then give up your territorial claim there. Then comes Balochistan. Then say, all right, then after all, these are only 7 million people. What the hell? It is rot and rot. Give up Balochistan. Then give up certain parts of East Pakistan. That is why it is so important that people say we shall fight for every inch of our territory. And the whole must always sacrifice for the part. There's no such thing. Then when should you make sacrifices? Should we make sacrifices for 101 million people? There are no 101 million people for which 100 million people should make sacrifice. Then why make sacrifice for one man? Because if you say 100 million people should only make sacrifice for something larger, then we should make sacrifice for 101. Where is that one extra man for which we should make a sacrifice? So the question does not arise. It is an argument which is being used by some superficial quarters and some vested interests, and we must realize that the struggle for Kashmir is not something which is an obsession with us. It's a principle. It's the completion of Pakistan. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I firmly believe that Pakistan is a head without is a body without a head, and it's a beautiful head, Jammu. We cannot abandon that struggle. It's out of the question. But in order to espouse that struggle, and in order to continue that struggle, we need all our resources, all our unity, and we must support principles throughout the world. We cannot expect people in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Ivory Coast to support Pakistan on Jammu and Kashmir if we do not also support their causes. Because this is not something which is our private preserve. We go to some countries and say, well, you must support us. Well, they'll say, why? So we have to give the reasons. And when countries support us on Jammu and Kashmir, it is not on a partisan basis. It's on the principle. I have repeatedly said this, that when countries say that there should be self-determination in Jammu and Kashmir, it is not that they're taking a pro-Pakistan position and an anti-India position. It is that they're taking a right position, a judicial and a just position, which in the 20th century one expects from important and sovereign states. So it is not that we are taking a position which is anti-India and pro-Pakistan, we are taking a just position. And that is why it is important for Afro-Asian solidarity to crystallize. Because we belong to the underdeveloped countries. We are the proletariat of the world. We have gone through the great difficulties, trials and tribulations, poverty, disease, misery, exploitation, domination. It's not just a phenomenon which is confined to the subcontinent. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And therefore we have to cooperate, collaborate, get together, assist one another, whatever the odds, no matter what the difficulties. There are bound to be setbacks. There are bound to be setbacks. There will be the ups and downs. There are bound to be vicissitudes. People may change, ministers may go, presidents may go, people who hold the right cause may go, but eventually, and finally, the right cause must prevail. Justice must prevail, and Asia and Africa must have a better day. We are not asking for domination of any part of the world. We are just asking for a better life. Our people deserve it. For centuries they have lived in misery, squalor, filth and poverty. Is it unfair that we say that halt this exploitation? Is it unfair that we want our children to get a better education, for our future generations to live better? Must we be labeled as communists and various other things merely because we fight against domination, because we resist against exploitation? Must we be blackmailed and must we be slandered in this fashion merely because we say it is not the law of God that people should have a better life, that children should have smiles on their faces, they should be able to go to school, they should be able to have education? For that must we be stigmatized? Must we be called pro-speaking and pro-God knows what just because we want to defend our sovereign integrity and our national independence and give our people a more egalitarian future? Did we fight for our independence so that we should live in misery and we should live in disrespect? Independence it becomes meaningless. It's an abstract expression if it is not taken to its logical culmination. That people must have better lives, their children must go to school, they must have employment, they must be able to have social security, they must be able to have the social facilities and the cultural existence which is of any other country. Where is the opposition to any ideology or to any group or to any country? Because if the people of Asia and Africa cry for justice after centuries of exploitation and domination, Afro-Asian solidarity is not directed. It's not directed against any other country. It's not directed against any other force. It is for self-preservation. It is for the consolidation of national independence. This is something which is due to us. It's a part of the process of independence. And I do not therefore fail to see why there should be so much hatred or so much fear against the concept of Asia-African solidarity, that this is a myth, it's not a reality. Well, what is a myth? It's again an ideal, it's again an expression, decolonization, end of oppression, a better life. That's not directed against any country in the world. And therefore, when we say that there should be Afro-Asian solidarity and that the nations of Asia and Africa must get together, that doesn't mean that unnecessarily there should be coup d'etats and revolutions where the conference is going to be held. But if there are coup d'etats and revolutions, well, we have to face that situation. You must be prepared to face the odds. If you want to espouse the right cause, you must be prepared for sacrifice. You must be prepared to go through a long struggle. And in Asia and Africa, we are going through a long struggle. And I tell you that once that struggle is completed, the relations between Asia and Europe will be much better. It may seem a contradiction today that it is not better, but I will give you my own reasons why I think that once we have really removed the vestiges of all foreign domination and of all grotesque interference, this is the worst aspect of the 20th century, foreign interference in the internal affairs of others, which I shall come to later. Once we have removed those factors with sacrifices, we will realize that relations between Asia and Europe will be better. Why will they be better? Because both Asia and Europe they have a geographical propinquity. They're close together geographically. Then Asia and Africa, Asia and Europe are the homes of old ideas, of religions, of philosophy. They have gone through war and turmoil more than any other continent. And they know what it means to suffer. But in the age of domination, differences between Asia and Europe became great because the era of domination accentuated not the common factors but the differences. Once you remove domination, once domination comes to an end, the common factors will come into operation. And that is why I believe, rightly or wrongly, that General de Gaulle has espoused the great ideal when he talks about a European Europe. There must be a European Europe, there must be an Asian Asia. Now, talking in terms of an Asian Asia, as Pakistanis, we must take into account the fact that we are 100 million people living in Asia. China is in Asia. Any development, any force, any progress that takes place in Asia must have the Chinese factor, it must take the Chinese factor into account. Firstly. Secondly, we have a common boundary with China. 400 or more square miles of most rugged area. They are our immediate neighbors. We look at each other face to face every day. We must have some understanding and some modus vivendi. That's not being a communist. Thirdly, no problem of Asia can be solved without the participation of China, like no problem of Europe can be solved without the participation of the great European powers. Fourthly, we are a small country, we are an underdeveloped country. We want to see the United Nations as a collective force grow in strength. How can you have a United Nations which in its Article 2 or whatever it is believes in the universality of United Nations when you exclude 700 million people? So when we say that 700 million people should be included, that's not being pro-Chinese, that's accepting the reality of life. Then for the last 30 or 40 years, there have been disarmament conferences. How can you have a disarmament, true and meaningful disarmament, when you exclude 700 million people and a nuclear power from the disarmament? So when we say that these are the objective facts and the objective realities of the situation, that should be understood. That should be understood by the West, it should be understood everywhere. And It's a great pity. It's very painful that people should be labeled, leaders should be labeled, others should be labeled. Oh, this is pro-Peking, this is pro-Chinese. These are the rooted facts of history, and they must prevail. And we are not being communist. We have our ideology. We are proud of it. And Pakistan, I think, has a contribution to play, as I told you at the very outset, on the ideological plane, on the ideological basis. And there have been many times when Pakistan has, rightly or according to its own judgment, not agreed with certain views of China, like of the United States or of any other country. But this cannot detract from the objective considerations. Also, taking into account the objective considerations, India is a great objective consideration. It has been said that I am anti-Indian. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I am not anti-Indian. Why should I be anti-Indian? There is no reason for us to be anti-Indian. As Muslims, we are supposed to be magnanimous, and we got Pakistan. We got what we wanted. Why should we be anti-Indian? There is no basis for me to be anti-Indian. The question is that India is a great fraud. What can I do about that? You remove the fraud and the chicanery, there is no basis for the people of Pakistan to have anything against the people of India. People of India and the people of Pakistan, we share common history. We are parts of the same geography, geographical compulsions, geopolitical factors, and we have the same culture, and there are many things that are similar with us. They share poverty. We are part of the same music and march of Afro-Asian solidarity. So we have nothing against the people of India. All that we say is that for cooperation to exist, cooperation must be between equals. Cooperation must be on the basis of reciprocity. Cooperation must be when nobody is trying to do someone else down. Cooperation should not be a means to subjugation. Cooperation should not be something that through the back door you come and knife someone like Shivaji knifed Afzal Khan. And when those conditions exist, then we would be only too happy to cooperate with India. But until the fraud and the farce and the chicanery is removed, I believe confrontation must continue. When a thief comes into your room, you don't put off the lights, you put on the lights. That's what confrontation means. Expose the wrongdoer, expose the delinquent. And all right, you have referred to the 1,000 Years' War, which I referred to. It was a political and a metaphorical phrase. But if we do not want to fight for 1,000 years, please do not forget there is a 1,000 years conflict behind us. So, our quarrel with India is not eternal. It can come to an end on the basis of justice and equity. But if there ever is a quarrel in the whole world, it is between India and Pakistan. Unless it comes to an end properly on the basis of justice, which means not only the right of self-determination for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but for proper treatment, not on the basis of subjugation of their own minorities, where there are 100 million Muslims living there, also on the basis of justice in East Pakistan. For the first time I have spoken that we have rights in East Pakistan also. Pakistan has legitimate rights in the eastern part. And time will come when I will mention those rights. And the question is that those rights must be fulfilled. The wrong against Pakistan must be put right. And till then, I am quite convinced in my mind that whatever the turmoil and the difficulties, eventually we shall succeed, because India is the cancer of Asia, like Israel is the cancer of the Middle East. Now, sometimes we are given very good advice, and we are told, "Now look here, old boys, be nice, you know." And we're told that this is not the right thing to do. After all, you must live in peace, you live next door to each other and all that. But I tell all our friends from wherever they be that physician, heal thy own wounds. When it comes to your own problems, then you are prepared to forget everything. You are prepared to close your eyes on Vietnam, on southern Rhodesia, for the pound sterling. You are prepared to do whatever you like. But when it comes to us, you tell us, now look here boys, now you know. As foreign minister and as a minister, you said briefly, I was minister for 8 years, a long time. Briefly in your life. I was not ever anti-British because I do not believe that we should carry over the legacies and bitternesses. The struggle is finished. We are Muslims. The struggle is completed. We have survived. We are victorious. Let bygones be bygones. This is our weakness. This is, as George Brown now is, temperament. This is our temperament. So I tell you the truth. God above me, I've not been anti-British. I think that they have great qualities. They are a resourceful country and they are skillful. They have many virtues and they know it on many issues in which we could have disagreed. We said, no, all right, we agree. And I have some of the best friends in this country, and here I am on my sick leave in London. But taking everything into account, I don't think I'll be misunderstood. If I were to say that our relationship with this country, for instance, must be more realistic. We are on the eve of a Commonwealth conference. Another Commonwealth conference is taking place in a few weeks' time. Have they and have we really and honestly with integrity asked ourselves if there is any virtue left in this institution? And if we believe that we must take into account the objective conditions, then I believe that time has come when we have to reassess our attitude to the Commonwealth without in any way affecting our bilateral relations with the United Kingdom. I believe that our bilateral relations with the United Kingdom will become stronger. Now let me briefly tell you, as I said I'm going to meander on these subjects, let me briefly tell you what are the contradictions. Contradictions are that the Commonwealth exists because there are disputes. And disputes are not supposed to be reconciled by the Commonwealth. India became a part of the Commonwealth not because Nehru had great ideals of a multiracial organization, because he knew there was Kashmir and he wanted British support. We also had to become members of the Commonwealth because we said if India does not become members of the Commonwealth, if India becomes members of the Commonwealth, we will not have the support, so let us be members. So disputes give rise to membership of the Commonwealth. In Africa, also the same position exists. The African states, they say they have territorial claims against each other and they say Commonwealth. I have often wondered what is the virtue and the vitality of the Commonwealth. And I have come to one conclusion, that at the end of every Commonwealth meeting, I hope I'm not revealing any secrets, it is said, you know, it's very good that we met and exchanged views. This in itself is very important. The very fact that we have met and exchanged views, this is very important. Well, that's very good. But is it going to lead to lessening of tensions? Disputes give rise to membership of Asian African states, and disputes are not supposed to be resolved in the Commonwealth Conference. Then disputes accentuate tensions, and those tensions are bottled and caught in the Commonwealth. Secondly, the whole face of Asia and Africa is changing. Whole face of change. We are going through really a great upheaval. And it must not, we must maintain our contacts. We must send our students here. We must have the best of relations bilaterally, but we must not confuse our people. Our people are not sophisticated, they are not intelligent, they haven't gone through the bar and lentils and everything. You must talk to them in terms of black. They get confused. What is this? On the one hand, you say that there is colonialism, neo-colonialism, there are exploitation. On the other hand, you say, well, the fact we met is a very good thing, and all sorts of things. So our people must know where their position lies. And our position lies in Asia. It is in Asia alone that we have to that we have to forge our future, which does not mean that there should be no contact at all with the West. The contact with the West is wonderful. I tell you, one of the greatest satisfactions I have had as foreign minister is the contact that I've forged between France and Pakistan. Because they understand our music, that perhaps there's something in them. They have given self-determination to their colonies, they have given self-determination to Algeria, they know the role of China in Asia, they know the position of Vietnam, and we have developed good contact. There can never be anything as to break relations. How can relations be broken? Why should relations be broken? We want to foster relations. What is the basis of fostering relations? It is not on the basis of East of Suez. What is this sophisticated neo-colonialist chauvinism, East of Suez? East of Suez means the policy of West of Suez must be different. What is the policy of West of Suez? West of Suez, the policy is cooperation, goodwill, fraternity. If you get thrown out of the Commonwealth, common market, try and get back into the common market. No exploitation, no domination. But there must be a policy East of Suez. You've lost all your teeth, yet you want to show your teeth. Policy East of Suez is a policy which in political terms can only be described in terms of domination and interference. In South Arabia, in UAR, in the subcontinent, and in Malaysia. So we want to have good, fraternal, sound relations with Great Britain and with other. Great Britain must realize its present capacity. It must know its role. It cannot play a triple role. It does not have the capacity to play a triple role in the Atlantic, in Europe, in the Commonwealth, and East of Suez. The pound sterling is collapsing. Mr. Wilson must do all sorts of things, and yet they have a triple role to play. And they must lecture and to pontificate to us as to what should be our foreign policy and who should be the ministers and who should not be the minister. That story. That story I still have to tell. In national interest, I will not say it, but one day, I'll have to say this, the grossest and the grotesque interference in internal affairs of Pakistan. There's no basis. So, let everyone cultivate his own backyard. Let everyone develop according to their own national mores, according to their own national traditions. Let everyone develop relations on the basis of geographical, political considerations on account of the exigencies of the times. And do not label people in terms of black and white. There is no black and white left. The world has become grey. And let the natural evolution take place. And there will be upheavals. Why should we be afraid of upheaval? Because when you're striving towards justice, when you're striving towards a great ideal, it must be on the basis of upheaval. It must be changed. This took place in Europe from 1848. They had their revolutions. They had the revolution in France. They had the revolutions here in this country of its own nature. And they had revolutions everywhere. So Asia is going through change. The face of Asia is changing. And you must understand that the main difficulty, the main problem is that Either they refuse to understand it or they do not want to understand it. But you must understand that the change will take place if you close your eyes or if you open your eyes. It's better that you open your eyes and see the change. And the change is a beautiful change. It's a great change. There are many scars on the face of Asia today, but it's got a smile on its face at the same time. And there can never be farewell to sunshine. We must go through this change. We must be prepared for it. And I believe that Asia, and particularly Pakistan, which is a nation of 100 million people, must take into account all these factors, all these considerations. We cannot confine our relation on the basis of certain considerations alone. You have to look at the totality of things. You have to look at the whole picture, the whole canvas, not only for the present, but for the future also. And I know in our part of the world, part of the legacy left behind by colonialism, politicians, they're nasty people. But if you really examine the role of political life, shall I say, rather than politicians, it is a great role and a great challenge. A politician has to be a mathematician. He has to calculate, take into account everything. A politician must be a musician and a romanticist. This does not mean that we go to nightclubs, but he must know the tempo of the times, the rhythm of revolution. A politician must be an architect, must build for the present as well as the future. And those who are involved in the political life of our Asia, and I would like to talk of Asia in personal terms, of our dear Asia, we must know the rhythm of these times. We must know. And we must think of our country, not only in terms of our country, but in terms of its totality. There was a time when Pakistan thought there was only India, and the rest of the world fitted into that picture. Now there is the world, and India is a part of that world. And this is what I mean by the totality of things. And I believe that this is my firm conviction that our two wings, East and West Pakistan, very often it is said, oh, geographical monstrosity and things like that. But this is the most sublime balance that has been achieved. What we talk of parity is not really a political expression. Parity, if you bring it down to earth, it is balance. It's like two wheels on a pulley. You remove one wheel, the other must fall. And here is where our balance lies. The two great Muslim forces galvanizing against a decadent society. And this must continue. This must continue not only in the interest of East and West Pakistan. I would much rather call it Pakistan Eastern Province and Western Province. But this must continue not only in the interest of Eastern, but must continue in the interest of progress, in the interest of the evolution of the right ideals, and above all, in the explosion of the fraud called India. We must continue this great partnership, this heroic partnership. 18 years have passed. 80 years will pass, but the unity will continue. It has to continue in the interest of both the wings of Pakistan. And I believe that here or anywhere else, we may have our differences, we may have our difficulties, but overriding those considerations is this great common factor that we need each other and we need this balance in the subcontinent. It has to exist in the interest of Pakistan as otherwise. If you examine the problem, West Pakistan without East Pakistan, you come to a dead end. If you examine the problem of East Pakistan without West Pakistan, you come to an equally dead end. And as I said, Pakistan is the handsomest offspring of self-determination. It is the will of 100 million people in which the people of Bengal were in the vanguard of the movement. This cannot be forgotten. And we must bury our prejudices, we must forget our differences. Every country in the underdeveloped nations has vociferous tendencies. You look at it from Nigeria to Indonesia. you will always have some centrifugal forces, the north and the south, the east and the west, Sumatra, Java, northern Nigeria, eastern Nigeria. But we have to overcome the difficulties. We have to see that the consolidation of the nation takes place. And there are, why should people be interested in the unity and in the commonness and the strength of these regions? It is for us to show the interest, because the seeds of discord will always be laid. They will always be, it's for us, for leadership of Asia and Africa to bury them. Anywhere, I said, from Nigeria right up to Japan even. Anywhere you go, you will find these factors. This is because the complete evolution has not taken place. And this evolution must take place. It has to take place. So these are the realities of life. We have to face it. Yes, we are separated by 1,000 miles of territory. All that is understood. That we speak Urdu and Bengali, that's also understood. But nonetheless, what are the forces that unite us? And what are the disasters that divide us? That should be taken into account. And here, if I can just plainly brush aside on local problems, I know Mr. Mujibur Rahman very well. I've met him just before he was interned. I met him. We had long discussions and all this. I said, let's go and address public meetings. And so it's not that we should look at things again in our own country in terms of black and white. Just as I have appealed to you not to look at international problems in terms of black and white, I think even our national problems, we will not look in terms of black and white. Whatever our faults are our faults. And we should admit them, we should try and find a solution. Solutions are bound to be there because there is a common interest. And there is a will to survive. And as I said, divided, there is disaster for us, for both the East and West. And I believe that as much as East Pakistan, West Pakistan has made a great contribution to the unity of Pakistan. And the last war against India showed it. It was a glorious period in our history. It was really a great period in the history of Pakistan. How this great nation united stood as a rock against an onslaught of a predatory other. The Indians said that by evening, Lahore shall fall. And my reply was that no Indian mother has given birth to an Indian who can take Lahore or Pakistan. So, it's not the size of India, it's not the military resources of India. What is required is our stamina. We have the stamina, we have the will, and we have a right cause. We uphold a right cause and a just cause. And inshallah, we shall succeed. This is my feeling. Oh yes. 1 second. Sorry, Mr. Salam Talib. Yes.
Justice is on both sides. Who is to tell that this or that is just?
Mr. Bhutto will answer it. I am very thankful to you for asking the question. I welcome it. I salute you for it. I say ask the 5 million people of Kashmir. Question followed by a supplementary question. The first one is, as you have already put in your statement, that since Mr. Bhutto is almost out of the action, I want to ask him if the foreign policy, as we say, was instrumental to formulate, is going to be edged by the present regime and the present government. And second question is, if so, what are the principles of that part of the foreign policy are going to be affected by that? The third one is, the third question is, what are the implications of CIA on the government of Ireland? May I make one little request? Mr. Bhutto has very little time to answer questions, so I request the ladies and gentlemen to forget about the slogans for the moment. So my friends know that I'm fond of reading. I recently bought a book called Parliament and Mumbo Jumbo or something. That's right. And so this is a parliamentary question with supplementary. I didn't say that I was the author of the foreign. I've never said that I've been the author of Pakistan foreign policy. I've said that foreign policy of Pakistan is rooted in objective realities, and the Constitution of Pakistan is very clear as to the authority in the country, and I have only been an instrument. I didn't say I was the author of the foreign policy of Pakistan. I have only been an instrument of the people of Pakistan in the execution of the foreign policy. So that much I must make clear beyond doubt. And secondly, great powers, they have their great means. Once Apollo enters, it's an Apollyon entry, so you have to take these things into account. As I said, whatever the sacrifices, whatever the difficulties, in the end, the stream must go down on its right course. And this has nothing to do with the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Yes, Mr. Khan. Whatever the difficulties. Mr. Kadi, can we survive without American aid? If not, then what we are going to do about it? I think this is a very important factor in influencing Pakistan foreign policy. This is a very important question, and I made reference to it, I think, briefly by saying there is no such thing as dominating context at all. Today you find efforts are being made for the improvement of United States and Cambodia relations. You find that there are efforts, as Mr. McNamara has said, building bridges to China. Now that he has said at the time of the war between America and Asia. And when you make these statements, that means that 100 million people also have to be taken into account, their importance, the fact of their geographical strategy. I don't think there's ever a question in terms of black and white that America must completely suspend arms, military or economic assistance. After all, we're members of SEATO, I think, we're members of CENTO, God knows what other bilateral agreements and everything else. So we have not left any of these organizations. We are still there, and the question is, we have made some flexibility, some adjustments, some other factors have to come into account. Mrs. Gandhi says that India is not aligned. 15 million tons of food grain from the United States, $900 million of commodity aid, $105 billion of project aid. Still they are not aligned. This is double alignment, I think. So there is no such thing as that these things all abruptly come to an end. It's not in those terms. Diplomacy, the interest of a country, everything has to be taken into account. So I don't, and secondly, I don't like the word aid. It's loans with a capital. These are loans. They have to be repaid. They have to be repaid with our jute, our cotton, and the farmer on the field with interest. So it's not aid. It's loans. They may be long-term loans, but that's the competition between the various blocks. We are not a part of that. In Western Europe got $18 billion of Marshall aid. And they never called it aid, although they got much more than we have got. And today, what we are getting is less and less. Asia and Africa is getting less and less, and with greater and greater conditions. So we must take everything into account.
So what the point is why America is not going to solve this problem when it is in the best interest of Asia and the interest of America as well.
I think I've very often said that finally this dispute has to be settled by us.
Next question, Farid Qadri. Part of my question we already mentioned, but not the time, our membership of SEATO. And you have very clear in your speech that it is not a question of Kashmir, it's a question of just and issue as a unit. Now, taking into consideration that, how as you as a foreign minister reconcile the fact that we are members of the SEATO organization, then the SEATO organization of higher information, that, and the second thing, it is corrected to say, that the just card cannot be just a vote, unless there is the also vote with that card. How much better we have been operating in Vietnam or
Well, you perhaps do not understand it because you weren't the Prime Minister. But I know, I understand. This has something to do with the evolution of the times. As I said a little earlier, non-alignment has got a different interpretation today. Alignment has got a different. We have gone far away from the Bandung Conference. You must take into account the development of relations between the Soviet Union and the United States. You must take into account the situation in Eastern Europe. You must take into account the position in Western Europe, of France's role, of President de Gaulle talking of Europe from the Atlantic to the Urals. So a drastic evolution has taken place to put those labels out of date. So nations are now concerned more with the substance. India can call itself non-aligned. Countries are not concerned with what it calls itself, but what it is. Pakistan may call itself aligned, but they're concerned not with what it is in technical terms, but where it is moving towards. And the factors of independence, of these things all come into the picture. And here again, it's a question of, I say, black and white. Vietnam, internal affairs.
Yes, somebody speaking. What a minute.
But the point which you have mentioned on this point of it is quite contradictory to the economic condition and economic system we are having at home. Do you think it would be possible? Well, I know my question will be a bit related to each other because the point is we are pursuing these problems and we have a feeling that we are going back to the American economy or American society. Would you kindly enlighten us by saying that whether it is true or not, and if it is not true, how are we going to achieve our economic condition, which always prompts us to support the American society?
Well, I admit, as I told you the other day when we met day before yesterday, that internal and external considerations influence each other. Internal policy influences external policy influences internal policy. Actually, the whole thing is unitary. There's no separation, truthfully speaking. But they influence each other also. That's also an advantage. But I'm sure you're not satisfied fully.
Mr. Hasna, please. Next question. No, Mr. Hasna. Oh, he took it out before. He was asking me from before.
You have explained of the person of Pakistan. And you have said that now that Pakistan can continue to of external influence. And because you are not aware as the foreign minister of Pakistan, do you expect that so far the foreign policy of Pakistan is concerned, there will be change in the foreign policy because of the foreign pressure?
I didn't say that. I don't think I said that Pakistan is subject to external influences. You may have come to your own conclusions, but I didn't say that. And I believe that Pakistan and you cannot have a more authoritative statement than the voice of the president himself. That should assure you fully that Pakistan policy is dependent on Pakistan interests.
No, definitely. Money. If your son will come, I'll call up you.